Hey y'all, let's get into who Tèanna Gabriell is. Who am I? As some of you may already know, I'm 25 years old. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I went to Montclair State University, where I obtained my Bachelor's of Arts in Jurisprudence, Law, and Society. And I'm currently serving my community as a school teacher, an elementary school teacher in my hometown. I'm currently building a community, Dear Little Me. It's a support group where Black and Brown individuals, men and women of all ages, can connect with someone who is also healing their inner child. While I've accomplished a lot, and to others I am a success, I truly don't feel that way. And I've had various passions, talents throughout the course of my life. And I've always been a really hard working and willing to do whatever I put my mind to, right? Like achieve it. But I still felt like this fear and of just being a failure. Let me get a little bit more into it for y'all. You see, I was born to two teenage Jamaican immigrant parents. My mother was a single mother, and I moved to the West Ward of Newark around the age of 5 because that was the neighborhood my mother could afford. If we being exact, I'm from Hooterville, right? And I always say I grew up with my parents because I truly did. Unfortunately, but fortunately, I had a front row seat to my parents' adversities. I'm talking domestic violence, depression, crime, homelessness, etc., right? But in my mom's best efforts to protect me from the pain she endured, my mother made it clear that she wanted me to be free to follow my dreams. She strictly enforced, rules that she believes shielded me from poor decision making. And ultimately, she just really did not want me to, get pregnant at a young age and felt, burdened by the responsibility of being a mother. So she poured into my gifts and my passions. I mean, anything I wanted to do, she was all for it. She was always, egging me on, always supporting me in whatever endeavor I wanted to be a part of, right? Nonetheless, during that time, I actually idolized my father, right? He wasn't the parent in my household, but I idolized him for what I seen from the outside looking in of his life. And I felt like he had, great decision-making skills, right? He seemed more stable than my single parent. So I idolized him in his decision-making, and I really held his opinion to a very high regard. So when he told me that it was important for me to be realistic and practical in my dreams, and that I should have a plan B and how important it was, I took that at face value. So when I auditioned for The Voice my freshman year of high school and I didn't make the cut, I made up my mind right then and there that I wasn't doing this no more. Before I even got home, before we got on the train to Jersey, I decided that I wasn't doing it anymore. It wasn't my first time auditioning for a talent show or, some type of talent scouting competition. But in that moment, I had decided that I was no longer going to put myself out there to feel that rejection. And to me, that rejection that I had felt on that day was a sign that this was not for me. And I felt like, I had received a couple no's already, so maybe this just wasn't for me, right? So I quickly decided to pursue a career in law. I did everything in my power to get accepted into an EOF program in New Jersey because I knew that was the only way that I was going to be able to afford college, but still be close enough to support my family, right? Because it was really important for me not to leave home and go too far. So I ended up going off to Montclair State University where I got accepted into their EOF program. And I took full advantage of it. I graduated with a 3.5 cumulative GPA and a host of experiences serving my community. I spent those 4 years preparing myself for law school. Gratefully, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, I had a whole midlife crisis and decided I was not going to law school. After quarantining in my apartment, I decided in that quiet time that law school was not what I wanted to do right then and there. So I deferred my acceptance and I decided to go live my life and figure some things out before I decided to go into law school. So ultimately, I realized in that time that law school wasn't for me. Baby, I done locked my hair. I done held different, roles, whether it be a guidance officer, case manager, youth engagement specialist, now a teacher, and just ultimately always serving my community. And in those experiences, going through my journey, in my wellness journey, healing, evolving, failing to my knees, dealing with anxiety, getting back into therapy, moving my body more, pulling myself out of some of the darkest periods in my life, and just ultimately evolving. I spent the last 3 years post-grad really just growing and changing and figuring out who I was and who I am. And in that, as I've evolved and grown, I realized that the vision God has given me for my life requires me to be my authentic self. It's time for me to fully embrace Tèanna, the dancer, the public speaker, the teacher, the life coach, community builder, the writer, and all of that is really, to say the least, to who I am and everything that I encapsulate, you know? And in this season of my life, I'm no longer interested in conforming to one label. I affirm that I am everything that God has called me to be. And I understand now that I was never fulfilling, you know, or I never really felt fulfilled because I wasn't really being myself fully in every space. At times I was really just trying to put myself in a box and conform to whatever my title or label was in that space, rather than showing up as my authentic self. And at times I didn't even know what that looked like. And I feel like when we don't give ourselves the chance, the time, and the room to breathe and figure that out, and to journey into life, to discover who we are and just really dive into who we are, we allow the world to tell us who we are. And I did enough of that in the, earlier years of my life. And I was very intentional in the last 3 years about figuring out who I am, what I like, what I want. And while I don't have all the answers, I do know that I am no longer interested in planning my life. I am so focused on living my life and actually being present in my life. And while planning is important and being strategic, right, is important, I genuinely want to stay in the peace of allowing God to move in my life and align my steps wherever he needs me to go. So, in short, that is who Tèanna Gabriell is. And I can't wait to share more of who she is becoming.